Thanks for your patience, everyone. It's Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. It is 6:08 p.m. I'm calling to order an emergency meeting of the Select Board. We are meeting in the lower level of the Rutland Public Library. There is remote participation options available via Zoom, as well as television access. We're being recorded for local cable access live streaming now, as well as reruns and on demand and for YouTube. This is an emergency meeting pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20B. The Select Board will hold an emergency meeting related to matters that were not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours. We'll have a discussion of liquor license provisions and site plan approval conditions for a planned event at Milk Room Brewing, Alta Vista Farm, to be held on August 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2023. So if we can just start with the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we go any farther, Norm, I don't know if you want to open your meeting.
We don't have a quorum. Well, we do, but we would not be able to vote on anything. Because this would be certainly a conflict of interest. He would have to recuse himself.
They couldn't vote, but they could still
Right, I think
so that they could speak.
Right, I mean,
I'm willing to open the meeting.
I think that's your
Opening.
judgment, but
6:09, open the meeting of the planning board. This is August
third.
3rd.
I just wanted to call everyone's attention. I have here printed, in 2018, the Select Board at the time approved open meeting rules of decorum. They're printed here for everyone to see. I'm going to ask to keep everything, there's gonna be high emotions, I would imagine, but I'm gonna ask everyone to be, as respectful of the boards and the individuals. So they're printed copies here if you'd like to have them. So the board was made aware of some concerns of an event being held at Milk Room this weekend. The previous board had approved a one-day liquor license for the August 5th date, and then had later approved an extension of the hours pending some follow-up work. So Austin, I don't know if you have any more of a recap kind of for the board and the public.
So I think this came up to us yesterday, is that right, Tamika? So it's our understanding that the applicant was in front of this board in January, and some instructions or votes from the board were to be followed up with, on by the applicant. So it's our understanding some of those have not taken place. So in an interest of trying to accommodate obviously the applicant, but also making sure that there's compliance within the existing licenses and statutes and zoning bylaws that we have, we're asking the boards to consider modifying or approving any sort of modifications to the applicant's request to make sure that the event can still take place. But mostly just to have a discussion between the two boards that are relevant for this particular application. And I think Tamika has a lot more information. She had developed a memo for the board to consider with background and information. Tamika spent a lot of staff time on this. Candidly, that wasn't planned. So I just want the public to be aware that this was something that the town wasn't aware of until very last minute. However, Tamika put a lot of work into this and a lot of research. And before we get into this, I really just want to thank Tamika for her efforts and her work on this to inform the board as well.
Thank you. So to kind of recap the collation of what Tamika had found at a January 23rd meeting of the select board at the time of 2023, Milk Room asked for the hours to be extended for one event in August. And it was explained that it would be a silent disco and that the vote, so that where attendees would be wearing headphones so residents in the area would not be disturbed by the music. The board voted 3-1 to extend the hours to 1 a.m. on August 5th, 2023 only, contingent on approval by the police chief. We have subsequent communication from the chief police saying that if it's a silent disco, a one-time only silent disco, it's fine with the police chief. And that a member asked that the board be notified when specific events such as this would be taking place. And the applicant stated that the board would be notified within 30 days of seeking any sort of extension. And I asked that a policy be created related to extension requests to ensure that they're assessed fairly and on a case-by-case basis. Then Tamika confirmed via email with the police chief that he was okay with it being extended to 1 a.m. given that it was a silent disco. And a memo was sent to the applicant stipulating that the extension of hours was for a silent disco event on August 5th, 2023 only, with the memo attached. One of the concerns is that it's 3 days and the silent disco is starting later than the expected time. At an April 3rd, 2023 meeting, the select board met with the applicant and was requested to permanently have the hours on the liquor license be extended from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Primarily for special events. The applicant stated that he would be modifying his site plan approval with the planning board to include the changing hours. And the police chief asked that was asked if there were any concerns. He stated that he did not, but the board could always change the hours back if issues were to arise. After further discussion, the board did vote in favor to modify the hours Sunday through Saturday from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. contingent on approval of the planning board for the site plan modification. And I think that that's one of an additional area of question. We have in hand a copy of the site plan review decision for the agricultural accessory uses that was granted by the planning board on October 19th of 2021. So I think there's a few concerns. I want to state that I think that this accessory use bylaw, agriculture accessory use bylaw, is a work in progress. And while the hope is that it would be a model for the state, we found there's clearly some deficiencies to it. And I wish that there could be improved communication to address these concerns as an ongoing thing rather than less than 48 hours prior to an event that has been publicized and advertised and tickets sold and everything. So that's some of my personal take. So conversation for the board.
Go ahead.
Where do we want to start?
I mean, we can start with questions, comments, concerns.
I can start based on what I have observed through what I've been reading and the situation, what's happening. There's a question as to whether any of the event is taking place outside of the parcel that's defined in the site review. There was no plan modification for hours. We know that. Let's see. We know that the police chief was not contacted for any detail for a large event to take place. There is a question regarding lodging, which there's camping and RVs to be at the event, and there's no provision for lodging within the site plan review. So there's several areas of concern where, to me, it does not seem that this event is in compliance with the site plan review that was approved. Including the hours, because there was no site plan modification to extend the hours past 8 PM, which is what is noted in the
I think-
site review.
I think there's a couple of issues. I think the site plan for the August 5th date is a little bit more, that was approved in the January 23rd meeting for that one time, for the August 5th date. So
For
that
one
would be
day.
this Saturday night. And
Specific to silent disco.
correct.
So it's my understanding that that was approved because there was not going to be a noise concern for the later hours.
Not being here for January 23rd, and, you know, finding out about this further down the road, considerably further down the road, as a matter of fact, I have, you know, some concerns as to just what they wanted to do when they submitted this modification. Okay, and, you know, it's explained on the form, but then again, the letter that the board got from Mr. McKay expresses some concerns that are relative to what's going on, what's planned, and so on and so forth. So just trying to piece the whole thing together and come up with the exact description of what's gonna happen can be a little bit confusing. So, you know, looking at the one from January 23rd, okay, that explains one part of it, and then the adaptation explains another part of it, and so, okay, it just seems to be a little bit up in the air here yet, but, you know, I'm not sure just exactly where they feel that all of this is headed, and, you know, obviously, there's a question, which I was not aware of, that the police chief was not notified about this. Okay, and so,
So I think, go ahead, finish.
and so if that's the case, then, I mean, you know, you've got a big, what, party or whatever you wanna call it, going on there, and without the police chief being notified of it and, you know, having a detail put out there, then, you know, this is something else, so, okay.
And this is, when I speak a little bit to the need to kind of revisit the site plan approval, in reading the site plan approval, I don't see anywhere where it explicitly calls out that there would be police detail. I see crowd control and security for larger events. The events will be ticketed in order to maintain control over the size of the crowd. Staff would be increased to cover these events to ensure safety. Fire protection, is the site is subject to applicable fire protection regulations. The fire chief has supplied a letter regarding sitting of any tent larger than 400 square feet and other matters, and then see the fire chief letter. And a lot of those ended up in, a lot of the fire chief concerns came into the conditions. While I think that we as, I will speak as a board member, would hope that there is open dialogue, and for larger events, that it would be communicated across department heads. I don't see it in the explicit.
Item number 4, traffic control measures for roads leading to facilities. It states for larger events, an officer detail would be utilized as well as parking attendants.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, that's what I was gonna say.
Thank you. Kevin.
Speak Kevin Jarvie. Chief Monaco was notified. I just sent him a text to send you a text or you a text, so hopefully he'll respond that he was notified. The police detail was in my site plan. I put it in there, hoping that the other two would follow suit, and they didn't. And that was brought up several times in discussion with David George, who's not here, so that's kind of
Like
irrelevant.
to keep it just on one,
On
on the
just
issue
the
before us
police.
and not
Yeah.
comparing
No, I'm
across.
sorry, the police,
No, and I appreciate that, yeah,
he was notified.
thank you.
Monaco was notified. And again, so with, just for your information, I don't know how to talk about it other than I was the first one in. Modifications to my site plan in the last 6 months or 8 months wouldn't really be possible for me as an applicant regarding the situation I currently have on the planning board. This is the first time I've asked for over a year to have a meeting with everybody and discuss these things, these very specific things, why my site plan was the first one in, and I wouldn't be able to have that modified currently and have a meeting with our current planning board to modify my site plan. So what I was attempting to do with this festival, as it was already booked beforehand, was navigate through the hours that, as was mentioned, to 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. The modification or the addendum to that approval, for the planning board to approve it, saying that the planning board had to approve the select board's, is that the right way to say it? Everybody understand what I'm saying? That the planning board had to approve your approval.
Well, I think it needs to, the site plan specifically calls out hours, your current site plan approval calls out specific hours.
For typical, right.
Right, and
This
so,
weekend is outside of that realm of my current site
right,
plan.
and I think that,
Sorry, Leah, if I,
Yeah.
I would disagree. I think today, this weekend's event is considered a festival or a special event, which is exactly what the site plan review is for.
Right.
So how can it fall outside of the defined hours in the site plan?
The hours in, what I had gotten for was to the 1 a.m. I thought, and I'm not saying it's nobody's fault, I thought my typical license within the town was adjusted to 12 standard. So I believed, I'm not saying I'm right, that the select board's license allowed me to sell from 12 to 12. It was approved. Now, with that being said, that's obviously not the case as of now, because the approval of the site plan needed to be done through the planning board, which the night of the meeting, it wasn't a request of the planning board, right? Do you remember?
I think it was, the information I have is that it was, so there's two separate things. The special meeting originally, the special allocation was originally just for the one day, August 5th, and that was until 1 a.m. And that was the thought was it would be the music festival, Saturday into Sunday kind of thing. And then in April, it came back to have the hours on your liquor license completely adjusted blanketly from 12 p.m. until 12 a.m. And I think the conversation was it would be primarily used for special events. It wasn't going to be an every night kind of thing. And that you would need to modify with the site plan approval with planning board because it's change in hours and the site plan specifically calls out I forget that hours, the 12 to 8 p.m. or something.
I'm sorry,
No.
through the chair.
And there had also been conversation just as to give the board an advance notice for special events that would take place kind of outside of the normal to ask the board to be notified 30 days in advance.
I'm sorry, isn't that what I did by asking for the extension of the license?
So I think the extension of the
weekend?
first meeting was the August 5th, just for Saturday, August 5th. So that was the approval that went until 1 AM. There was conversation about it being a silent disco. I don't know that in the minutes it was talked about as far as the time from 9 or 10 PM until 1 AM would be silent or not, but I remember the conversation about it being a silent disco. The subsequent meeting then, which I think is where some of the confusion is falling in as far as the Saturday timeframe, or the Friday timeframe, is that you would ask to have the liquor license just blanketly extended from 12 to 12. We're the licensing authority for liquor license, but we don't have the control for site plan review or approval or anything. So we said, I think the board, my memory of the conversation based on what Tamika pulled, is that the board was amenable to extending the hours, but said you're gonna have to go back to planning board to get the site plan approval amended, because it's a change in the site plan. If we're doing it consistently, then it has to be in the site plan.
If I may.
Yeah.
And it's also and please correct me if I am speaking incorrectly, but the approval of changing the hours on the liquor license does not necessarily extend to other pieces of events, i.e. music, that would also be able to extend past the hours in the site plan review. The extension that the board did was specific to being able to serve alcohol on the premises until those hours, and the request to have the site plan modification to be anything additional that would need to be updated based on the reason for that request, festivals, what goes along with it to extend hours, is how I'm interpreting all of the minutes.
And I think, again, we talk a little bit in circles, because what the select board is able to license is the liquor piece, and the rest of the control falls to planning.
Site plan review.
Right, and so,
And that's where the question is, because there's several items that seem to not be in compliance with the current approved site plan review.
and so I guess what the main question for this board and planning to an extent, but if planning doesn't have a quorum to vote, I think is, can the festival go on? And if yes, are there things that the board would feel comfortable with to allow it to go on? And then say, this is kind of the last time that we're making these exceptions, or not, or no, it can't go on, or that's, I think, under the purview of the decision of this board. And I think that's where I think it's really unfortunate that it's less than 24 hours out from the event. And I think that in some ways, this office becomes the disposal for conflict. And I think that it can be, I wanna make sure the town is protected, and I'm also very pro economic development and not into hurting any business. And also, like I said, want to make sure that the town is adequately protected for anything that may arise. And I'm saying that taking any individual person or persons out of it and looking at it completely and totally holistically. I think this town is desperately hurting for beneficial economic opportunities. And I think that this bylaw, the bylaw itself, can provide that. I think that there needs to be adjustments for sure. And also, I think that events such as this are a potentially huge economic draw to the town. So I'm trying to work what this board is comfortable with or not comfortable with, and how to ensure that we don't continue to find ourselves in this loop, because it's a loop.
Yep.
So that's kind of, I think, where I'm coming from.
I don't disagree. This is the kind of thing that the town needs, but I think the town also has a history of accepting how do we say, ask permission, like, after the fact,
Oh, yeah.
you
Grant
know?
forgiveness and not
Yes,
permission,
ask
yeah.
for forgiveness, not permission. And I agree, it's unfortunate that we're talking about this 48 hours before this event is happening. This is all pieces that were started by, and things that were put in place by a board prior to the one that's currently in place. I don't want to be seen as, you know, the board that says no, but there has to be a starting point where we have the rules and the guidelines in place and they need to be enforced. And unfortunately, this is just the first circumstance that's been brought to this board's attention. And I feel that if we just say, we're gonna let this one go through, and the next one, we're gonna find ourselves in the exact same scenario. Well, you forgave them the last time, so why aren't you forgiving us? So I am of the opinion that there's pieces of this event that are not in compliance. And I think that we need to ensure enforcement under the current site plan review. And make sure that that's how this event goes. And ensure that site plan modifications are made for future events made in a timely manner. That applicants are permitted to bring those forward and have them reviewed.
I think some of the struggle is that there's been a lot that hasn't been able to happen through planning board the past year or so. And so I think that that's another challenge and a struggle to not only this instance, but some business as well.
Do we
And
know why?
there's some struggles, meeting super quorum, super majority for approval, depending on the individuals, yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's,
I also don't necessarily think that that's an excuse to not enforce.
I understand, and also, but if there's and I'm not saying that this is necessarily it, there are other cases also where things are significantly delayed or slowed down.
Understood?
Paul, did you have?
Okay, I believe, it's an economic opportunity for the town, and the town solely needs to be looking at those things. But I also believe that there's been a communications breakdown, if you wanna use that word, that we are here on a very short notice, trying to make up our minds just about how to handle the whole situation. So, I think that in going forward with these things, yes, people have to work together a little bit more and get their, simply put, get their acts together and do some things that are, going to eliminate the possibility of these type of confusions.
And I think there's some more that can be done on the part of the board as well to put measures in place to ensure proper follow-up for certain matters as well.
It has to come to the board
Yes.
in order for us to be able to move on it, but yeah, I understand what you're saying too, yeah.
Kevin?
Through the chair, Selectman Ledger, I don't know if you're fully aware of the backstory, but I am a member of the planning board. I haven't gone for quite some time. I've asked for multiple meetings for over a year now. I've never been responded to on emails. I've never had a phone call responded to. I've never been able to have discussions in regards to anything. I also co-authored the agritourism bylaw with David George, who's no longer here. So I wrote the bylaw we're in discussion with, and I was the first applicant in. So my site plan application has needed modification since the day it was approved, and we knew that. But even before I had it approved, David George and I needed to make modifications then. It was the second one's already made the changes that I should have been made. And I know there's no such thing as grandfathering the first one to make the second one, but the other site plan that are out there in this town today at other locations are different than mine. And if you look at those site plans, we wouldn't be sitting here if mine was the same as theirs. So mine's different. In the last 6 months, year, I have not, as a business owner, felt comfortable going in. I haven't been responded to by any member of the planning board for other meetings, so I haven't been able to present a modification, as you're saying I should have. I know I should have. You're right. I'm not able to as that individual. So I've been, I'm not able to do what you're asking me to do as the business owner, and as that I've tried, and it hasn't been easy personally. So as the business owner and as the applicant here, I'd like to ask, and I will meet with you tomorrow and the next day and every day thereafter to get this right. But for tonight, for the sake of the people that are over there right now today, setting up their lives or in making and selling their little jewelry that's happening right now, if the board decides to shut me down and remodify, people have already paid. There's not, at this point, 24 hours before, in my opinion, room for any sort of those modifications. I thought what I did was within my guidelines, and I tell you that from my heart. I didn't know that this weekend was not within compliance of. I was trying to work within compliance, so I didn't have to go before the planning board, because it would have been a no and my business would probably be shut down anyways. And I just, as a plea, for tonight, and again, I'll meet with you as much as you would like. I would do everything I can. I have been trying through multiple town administrators, including Austin, to have a group, to have communication from our chairman. I've been stonewalled for meetings with the chairman, with the vice chairman. I'm not allowed to do any of that at this point, and multiple town administrators will tell you the same thing, because we've been going at it for a little while now. So as of tonight, I would love to be able to go back, continue as we had planned. The schedule's already out there, and I'll do whatever it takes moving forward in compliance. But I would also request that some members of the select board are at the planning board meetings when I ask for because that's the other thing, I'm by myself. And I'm not able to have, so I would love to revisit my entire site plan, and I'll do whatever you would like. But when that goes before the planning board, can I ask a request that the select board members are all there for that meeting? And then I'll do whatever you'd like. I know this is down the road, but for tonight, I'm just hoping that you'd be willing to allow me to move forward. And I think you could make a motion to grant the license, and we were gonna go till midnight. We weren't even serving after 1. The 1 was a just in case, just so you know. Nick Monaco has been advised, there are no fire pits. They don't exist on the farm anymore. They were dismantled 4 days ago. Everything I think that the other, things that were brought up have been, as far as I know, rectified, unless Chief Monaco has any other concerns. Then to the midnight, there's no more alcohol after that. I've already been in contact with APR, who is Agricultural Protection Restriction, to the MDR, Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. As far as the camping on the land, there is in our bylaws, I was told by Dave George, camping, the RV parking is on the exclusion of the APR and is in a dirt lot down below. And there's only 4 of them, so this isn't thousands of people. This is a couple hundred, maybe. You can come by tomorrow and check it out.
Go ahead, Paul.
I think, to me anyways, it's unfortunate that really the first real, let's put it mildly, in-depth communication that I got on this whole project was this morning's email, okay? And, it kind of left me with a few questions here, and, and I'm gonna try and see if we can get these questions straightened out, but it's beginning to take form and shape, but yeah, okay. But that's where I stand on the issue right now is, okay. And again, I'm gonna hit on the word communications. In other words, this is the first that I've really got anything in depth on this morning, okay?
And I think some of this is, as select board, how much communication for some of this do we see? We granted permits with conditions, and then we unfortunately were made aware as of yesterday that there were questions about those conditions and having been met. And so I think that we does this board want to go around to every business in town and find out every business's business and ensure that there needs to be some level of trust and communication across the community and across the boards and commissions also. And so I struggle a little bit with the fact that I don't necessarily think that the board needs to have hands in everything, but we are addressing this as soon as we were made aware of the concerns. But
I agree, we don't need to have our hands in everything, but one of the reasons why I'm sitting here on this board is because I am representing the town and the town's best interest, and that includes enforcement policies, guidelines, whatever it may be. And I apologize, I just came in here as of May, the May election. I was not part of the past decisions or anything, so all I have is what's in front of me. And also thinking about the other people in the town that may be impacted if we were to allow something to proceed that could have a negative impact on them. Again, asking for forgiveness rather than permission. It's a cycle that I have seen in this town over and over again. And again, one of the reasons why I'm sitting here, that I want to make sure that we are doing what we need to as a town. Like I said, I'm not trying to prevent anybody from growing their business, doing whatever they need to earn their income. But it needs to be done in the right way. And even just at the April meeting, the meeting minutes, it's clearly in the motion that the approval for the liquor license hours was contingent on going to the planning board for site approvals. Again, I don't know all the history associated with that procedure or why you were not able to get those approvals, or if it was brought before the board. I can't speak to that. All I know today in time is that there isn't anything in place to accommodate that. And that's what I'm going on as far as for my thoughts here.
The first meeting, I believe it was in January, was it January that I asked for the 1 PM extension?
for the 1 day, yep.
That 1 day license, to have the planning board back involved on that, and again,
I think that one wasn't contingent
That
on
one was not.
it was just the
it was just the
April,
April where it
or the
was,
12 PM.
yeah, the 12 AM, yeah.
For the permanent change, yeah.
So moving forward, what's the recommendation to have that happen by the planning board? How do we, I've been talking with Austin every week about my situation as a member of the planning board. We can take Milk Room out of this, we can take Alta Vista Farm out of this, we can take my wife out of it, everything. Leah, what do I do? I would love to know what Mr. Narwhal would do with my farm. I would love to know what Mr. Anderson would do with my farm. I would love to know what everybody else would do with my farm, how they would do the business, because I'll do it that way. Mr. Williams isn't here. Keith, if I had known he wasn't gonna show up, I would have absolutely made sure that he was here. He's not here, and I don't know why. I sit here trying to do what's good and what's right, and unfortunately, you believe that I'm begging for forgiveness afterwards, and I'm not. I thought I was in compliance because of the 12. I can't go in front of them. I understand that you say that should have happened. If you have a suggestion as to how that happens, please let me know, because I've been asking for a year. And every single town administrator, there's been hundreds of conversations about my relationship with these people and the other gentleman. Hundreds. And there's never been a response back to me as a planning board member, as an elected official in this town. There's never been any HR. There's never been any one bit of communication from our town council. And I've asked for town council to talk to me. How many times have I asked you to have town council call me?
So I think we're
Yeah,
getting.
over and over and over
Right.
again, I get it, Leah,
I think-
I'll stop talking, but I just want her to fully understand how much effort I've put in and I've tried. And now it sounds as though you're saying we need to tighten the noose around me.
That's, like I said, I don't know the history of what,
Well, then I
What
think
is
we need to
happening here?
talk a lot, because that's very important that you do, ma'am.
the history doesn't matter. What matters is you as a resident, not a member of the planning board, has the right to request modifications to your site plan, and that should be reviewed. Why that's not happening, I can't speak to that right now, and I don't know if that's what we need to talk about here.
But I think that, you can finish. I was gonna say, I think that that's one of the struggles with Kevin is that he feels that that he doesn't have the opportunity to do that. And so he thought that he came before the board and yes, the motion, like I said, we can only grant the license for the liquor license. And so this,
And I guess what I'm trying to say is regardless of what that situation is, it's regardless of what the reason is that he's not been able to get the modifications to the site plan review, they still haven't happened. So you're not able to put on an event outside the parameters of the existing site law review until those are in place. So if there's something that needs to happen to ensure that Mr. Jarvie is being able to request modifications for review, then we can do whatever needs to be done to make sure that gets handled. But that's not related to what's in
And
front of us
would-
here.
would,
It is to an extent, yes.
so would this board be amenable to considering an additional 1-day special license for tomorrow? Because I think that event is advertised as Friday and Saturday. And the Saturday, I think, is mostly covered based on that 1 day that we approved. And then continuing to work through the additional. Maybe there's language around ensuring that there's police detail. I did see that there is detail scheduled, and also fire and EMS access, availability. I don't know that would be one avenue, that it's another 1 day.
But extending a liquor license to an additional day is not going to change the fact that there's events and elements to this festival that are not within the parameters of the site plan review, which is not something that we can
I think the big
I agree.
approve tonight.
I agree.
the big thing is the time, is that correct? Is that?
It's the time, it's the lodging, it's the location of the parking not being on the parcel within the site review. There's several items outside of just the serving of the liquor.
What's the parking? What's the parking?
I don't know if it's just the parking, but if there's any of the festival that is not taking place on the parcel listed in the site plan review, that's a concern. If it's in neighboring property that's not part of the parcel in the review.
So parking cars on the other side of the street, you're saying isn't part of site plan review?
It's my understanding that all of that would have to take place on the parcel in the site plan review, all elements. I will defer to the planning board on that interpretation.
Parking says the site contains on-site parking areas which are shown in the site plan, including handicap parking. Approximately 140 parking spaces are available in the lower section of the site, and more parking spaces are available elsewhere on the site. That's what it says in the conditions for off-street parking. And of course, there's a map, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in here.
Austin, do you have a comment? Well,
I got a couple comments, but just a question about, so Kevin, your 4th of July is parking across the street. How was that permitted then? Just a general question. And I don't believe we received any correspondence about issues with that event.
No.
My second is about the access to town council. Now, town council will not engage in private citizens' complaints against, or in this instance, elected officials. As a former elected official, I empathize sometimes when fellow board members disagree with me, but I think as an elected official, that's what we all sign up for, or what you all sign up for. And it's incumbent on board members to figure out how to get along, especially in times of disagreement. So there will not be access to town council for board relations and board mediation. Access to town council is for general bylaws, zoning bylaws, the actual business of the town. I just want to be clear on that. I know I've mentioned that to you a couple times now. So certainly if you have items for business for the planning board or other things, certainly.
We have talked about those, and I'm assuming
Yeah.
those are in the pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely, but just for.
Whenever that
for-
happens, but again, I hope you understand again.
Yeah.
Still, we haven't heard on that one either, so.
Well, I think we need a little bit more detail before we can't just send general things to town council, there's some cost incurred there. But I think, so details have been requested to the police department, and it's my understanding that they're in the process of making sure that they're filled. Just on the, so the parking that was raised, I was thinking about the 4th of July, for example, the road race. I know that there was substantial parking across the street. Now, I don't know the extent of your property, Kevin. I don't know if that's included within this site plan review, or is that a separate parcel?
It wasn't, but it was never, again, I don't wanna.
Yeah.
Parking on, land, if I recall, fire chief or the police chief can verify, you can actually park on one side of the street from my house down to Blueberry Lane, one side of the road, which has about 600 cars, doesn't need to be in the site plan review. If you prefer that I don't park in the field, we can park on the street all the way down, and that's legal. So we'll just have them, everybody will park on the road instead of.
Wanna review it, here it is.
And just one final thing as the board is reviewing, I certainly think that in terms of process, there's things that we can work on for communication between elected boards. I think Tamika does a great job. She happens to represent all these boards, or works with all these boards. So if the board is asking for official communications from one board to the other, I don't know if that happens already, if we do that already. Certainly I think we can, just to make sure that those things happen. Once it's turned over to a board, candidly, I think it's on the next board to take up the business. Obviously that's a challenge when you have business of one board and then the follow-up to make sure that the other board, which is separately elected, to do their business as well. This is a natural challenge of process, and obviously, unfortunately, it seems like some of this process was, some balls were dropped in this, but that's why we're, I think, hoping to have this conversation to clarify some of these things, not only for this particular instance, but thinking about the process altogether.
I think it's unfortunate that there are two members here tonight who had very little background in this at all, because we were not involved in what had previously come on, so,
Yeah.
okay? So in other words, for us to be well versed on the subject, I guess is something that, we just can't fit into.
Yeah. You also had a different town administrator. If we have a planner, you would have a completely new planner. You have a new member of the planning board. There's been a lot of transition across
Oh, yeah.
all.
I agree.
So I guess my question to this board is, planning boards here does not have a voting quorum. So in the past, the way I think the board has operated, and probably questionable, is doing the one-day approvals for extensions on and that kind of covered even the site plan approval hours and everything. So I think the intent was, even on that, and that was the previous board, and I can say I wasn't, for that one sorry, I'm looking for the language around it. I don't think that we ever asked specifically for on the January 23rd meeting for the extension to 1 AM on August 5th, that it was, that wasn't that was not contingent on site plan approval adjustment, that was simply just confirming with the chief that it was okay.
Correct.
So then the August 3rd was the blanket one that was contingent on site plan approval. And so would this board consider, and following similar to what was done for at the January 23rd meeting, extending for tomorrow, August 4th also, with, like I said, whether there's additional language to cover some of the other safety concerns and everything, and then move forward to work through the process to ensure that for Kevin as well as any other events throughout town, are worked through with the site plan approval reviews, updates. Go ahead, Tim.
Through the chair, don't you do that though with like the 4th of July? Work through months in advance, have everything squared away before you get to a point like this? Am I wrong? That's a large event. So I'm confused.
The 4th of July though isn't requiring site plan approval. I think that's where the question, the real question is coming in. Correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, from this board,
But
but
it's
I think
still a large event.
it is, yes, and they don't require site plan approval.
I through the chair, I think this whole process this is the hole that we've uncovered in the existing bylaw. That any large scale events that require site plan approval should be vetted, and a full emergency, response plan be vetted by the police chief, the fire chief, and any other stakeholders involved. Whether it's this applicant or any of the others, but that's what is missing in this bylaw. That would need to be addressed at some point.
And that's in the bylaw itself, not specific to any individual that has
There's nothing we can
been granted
enforce
access, exactly.
on any of the applicants, because there's nothing in the bylaw that says they need to come to us with an emergency plan. Some do, some are do that, but if there's nothing in it for the applicant to say, you must do this, then we can't, how can we hold them accountable to that?
And I think, if I may, I think also considerations for the special event, the extra special, I mean, it calls out a limit on the number of events that can happen, a process to allow for an extension if the applicant wants to maintain till 8 PM in their site plan approval, but then wants to have 2 events a year that go until midnight. What's that process? Because we don't currently have a process for that, I think is what we've discovered right now also, is that as the liquor licensing authority, we grant that 1-day extension, and it's assumed to apply then to the site plan when we granted, as a licensing authority, granted the authority to extend to midnight. It's specifically called blanket across the board, it explicitly called out site plan approval.
Well, let me ask the question, and Seth, you would know this more. When we did, and I apologize for my tongue strip, Rocktoberfest, did you go through an extensive review of emergency plans for that one?
No.
Okay, thanks.
No.
I just wanted to ask, I didn't know.
But I think, again, it's not called out explicitly that it's one of the check boxes that needs to be completed. Yes, the hope would be that it is, but it's not even documented anywhere as something that
Is it documented in our policy for 4th of July?
I don't know off the top
I
of my head.
think the answer is no on that one.
Right.
So
I think
It's not
that's-
just this bylaw, I just wanna make sure
No, and
I'm just getting to the point, it's not just the bylaw. You're right, Seth, there is a hole, I agree, and we should close that, but, I wanted to make sure that there's other things that we need to cover, and the other item I wanted to bring up. I'm gonna say this publicly, the planning board has never not allowed anybody to come to a meeting. We've never barred anybody from a meeting. So, just wanna put that out there, publicly.
did you have a comment, Jen? Oh, good. Oh, go ahead, Norm.
I guess I would further say, first of all, as far as modification on the site plan approval, just in my recollection, I'm gonna say something more than a year ago. I know I had a conversation with our then town planner that Mr. Jarvie was looking for a modification. Dave George simply asked him to provide a document outlining what modifications he wanted. That never happened. And finally, I can guarantee you that if we get an application for a modification to that site plan approval, we will certainly take it, we will hear it, we will discuss it, we will deliberate, and make a decision on it.
So I guess looping back to the business that we need to make a decision about tonight is the event for this weekend that starts in less than 24 hours. And but how that could possibly happen. It sounds like there's a feeling that it shouldn't happen, period, at all. Or I want that conversation, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to find a way to kind of make it work because there are significant loopholes that have been uncovered throughout this entire process. And so do we just say, too bad, so sad, all of our because this also was approved at town meeting,
What was
over
approved at
the
town meeting?
accessory use bylaw.
I'm not questioning the bylaw.
No, but I'm just saying that there's holes in that have made it maybe more challenging or not. Maybe, is there a way to grant a one-day extension? Like I said, historically, a one-day extension was through the liquor license and then it was assumed it applied to the event. And reading the bylaw now, I don't,
Through the chair, I would disagree that applying an extension to a liquor license applies to everything in a site plan review. I'd like to get confirmation that that's the case,
I think, well, and I think
because I
that,
don't know that we have that authority.
I think that that's the question is, for the 1 days, when, in the past, if there's been 1 days, asks for extensions or whatever, I think the thought was, and I'm using the January 23rd meeting as an example. The thought was that extending the liquor license to 1 AM allowed the event to happen beyond the hours in the site plan review. Does that make sense? And I don't think that,
1 AM is another calendar day too.
yeah, but the hours are noon to midnight.
I see them still as separate. The liquor license is specific to operating the brewery and the ability to serve beverages there during those hours. The site plan is specific to holding those non-agricultural events that are noted and the reason why they have the site plan. So that to me is, what's in the site plan is what should be applied to those specific events, as long as they have the liquor license that also stipulates those same hours. But I don't, to me, what I'm seeing here, that just extending the hours on a liquor license does not necessarily extend to what's noted in the site plan review.
I agree.
And I don't disagree with that. And I think that the conversation around in that January 23rd meeting was thinking that the extension of the liquor license hours was also extending, Tamika, correct me if I'm wrong, was also permitting the event to happen beyond the hours stipulated in the site plan approval. Is that?
Do that.
I was just gonna say, based on the motion that's in here, I would,
Yeah, so it wasn't explicitly stated that was the understanding. I would agree with you that I think we've probably been operating on that assumption without explicitly stating it. I think that the motion made at the April 3rd meeting was the first time we've ever placed a contingency based on a site plan in that particular situation.
and that, I mean, it makes sense if the plan was, we extending the hours on the liquor license coincides with the same change being made and approved with the site plan review. That's why it was a contingent, the motion was contingent on that, so that they would both take place at the same time. So I disagree that just extending the liquor license hours in this case should also do the same for the site plan review. We don't have the authority to change that.
Well, it's two different things, yeah.
Yes.
I think, Tim, you were up first, and then Kevin.
I wanted to ask a question. There was another large event that happened a week or so ago that included a circus, and my understanding is there was a emergency plan review of that, so that was the same situation, because it was an agriculture accessory bylaw event that was site plan approved, and yet that applicant went through that. Not saying that should know that, but that applicant went through a complete plan with the fire and police, if I'm not mistaken. So
I
I'm
think-
just,
I think-
Nothing to do with tonight,
Thank you.
but
Right, I'm not
Being
sure
on
what
record
that,
on that.
I want to put that on the record, because you say there's holes in it, but yet other applicants know what to do and some don't. I don't see that as
Nobody
a,
ever told me I had to do that, Mr. Narwhal.
well,
Never mentioned.
I just would like to focus on tonight, and the conversations for tonight are the hours and the process in which that could happen. Go ahead.
May I, through the chair, fast forward, the governing body on site plan approval, planning board, zoning, board of appeals, correct? Is that correct?
No ZBA.
It's,
So it's just the planning board? So if, hypothetically speaking, for this weekend, if there was an approval for tomorrow night with just a one-day license, I move forward with the event, they can file a grievance against me on Monday.
No.
And then now this, I'm in violation of my site plan, officially. So they can now find me in violation on Monday or Tuesday of my site plan. And then they can file whatever they wanna file, whatever grievance, whatever fines, whatever. It would force it would force this to now be brought before them to coincide and put my business in line with the other businesses, and then I would be notified that I should have put an emergency, because nobody ever told me that, so then I would be notified what all the other people have been notified of, which I have not been, and then everybody can be forced to now do it, so I'm happily moving, if that, the governing body is the planning board of my site plan and they find me in violation on Monday, send the email and we'll go through the process. If, through the chair, if it's possible to extend that tonight for me to have the liquor license approved for tomorrow, it already is for Saturday. Then at least we can have this all out on the table next week.
Austin, correct me, I mean, essentially, the approval is there from this, the select board previous had already given that approval contingent on site plan approval from planning.
yeah, it's my understanding. I mean, to me,
Yes. I think I'm confused with what you're getting at though.
No, so if Kevin's saying, I think if I may, Kevin's essentially saying, what if he just goes on with the event? And is, because he would be in violation of,
Then that would fall to the zoning enforcement officer.
and, right,
shut it down.
and that process.
Correct. Which at that point, as has happened in the past, if the zoning enforcement officer takes action against a business or a resident, that resident can then appeal that with the zoning board of appeals.
We can do that next week.
But I guess my question is, then is
The
this
only
bo-
person that can stop, the only entity, and Austin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that can stop this event from taking place would be the zoning enforcement officer.
And I guess my question is the liquor license that that the previous board approved in April that was contingent on the site plan review,
Since the motion was made contingent upon the site plan modification and that did not happen, then the current liquor license that was issued for 2023 would be the hours that are in place, which would be Monday through Saturday until 10 p.m. and Sunday until 6 p.m. I believe is what the current license says. The extension that the select board granted for Saturday, August 5th until 1 a.m. would allow Kevin to serve alcohol until 1 a.m. on that specific day,
on Saturday.
on that day only.
Looking at the license, the current liquor license that's on file now, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., Sunday noon to 6 p.m. Is that what you see right there? Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
And I'm not, you said that extending the liquor license is one thing that would permit him to serve alcohol on the premises. But that doesn't change the fact that there would be music, lodging, anything else that's not in compliance with the site review, which is a separate matter that can't be addressed by extending
Right.
the liquor license.
Right, exactly. And it would be, that's a planning board
Zone.
the planning board is a site plan approval piece.
Yes.
So if,
They have the ability to modify it.
Right.
But
but not tonight
not
because
to enforce it.
exactly. And they don't have the ability to modify tonight anyway because there's
They
not
don't have a majority to
They don't
vote.
have
So I think the concern is from why we're here to start with. The email that we received has concerns with the noise and everything that would be taking place this weekend, and that not being the event again because it's not in compliance with the site plan review and letting it continue.
And so the board could essentially make a motion and vote to shut it down completely. Or keep it as is, which would mean Friday would have, the liquor license would stop at 10. Saturday, the liquor license would stop at 1 because that previous extension continues. And Sunday, the liquor license would stop at 6, right? And, or extend liquor license for one day or whatever. And then it's on the applicant and planning board to determine make the modifications or follow up with the zoning complaints. I think. So if I think, Austin, to maybe help, if this board either shuts it down or continues or extends.
I am not looking to shut it down. I'm looking to have it operate within the parameters that the site plan review stipulates. Which means if that means lodging is not permitted, that should be enforced. If there's specific hours that have not been approved, the hours need to be enforced. That's what I am.
But I don't think we, as a select board, are the enforcing.
I understand that, but we're having that discussion on what is bringing us here, so.
Right, no, and I understand, I just am trying to piece together in my mind what the pieces are.
In the unknowing here, is the liquor license Just the beer and wine?
Yes.
Okay. Alright,
Beer and
It's just beer, there's no wine, beer and
Seltzer.
seltzer.
So, yeah,
It's
wine
malt.
and malt, they call it.
I don't have a license to serve wine.
I don't know what this board would need to do to enforce the site plan review. Conditions,
It's the.
if we have the authority to make a
it's the zoning-
motion to
it's
recommend
building
that.
inspector. He has all authority to do.
But does this board have the authority to make a motion to recommend that that take place? I don't know the answer to that.
He works for Austin.
So,
I think the board only has authority over the liquor license.
that's my,
That's the extent. I think, you know, the board could make a motion to recommend action. But I don't know that you could enforce that action, if that makes sense. But with that being said, it is the responsibility of the zoning enforcement officer to enforce the zoning bylaws. And so, you know, if Kevin were in violation and it was brought to his attention, he would be obligated to act on that.
and I'm thinking back to the previous instances with businesses that they never came before select board.
Correct, it only went to the ZBA when the recipient appealed it. Right. And then that went through the public hearing process. Right. But that, yes, the select board was not involved in those matters.
So we've had a meeting to hear a lot of things. And
if I may, one final statement, if I'm in violation of my liquor license over this weekend and I serve till 12 o'clock tomorrow night, Saturday night, and Sunday, I'll be in violation on Monday and we'll talk about it. And David McCray can come down and shut me down, he can put me in violation, he can do what, you know, I'm at the point where I can go back and tell everybody to leave. We shut it down, that's fine. You know where I am, I've talked to you, I've talked to a lot of, I'm fine with that. If that's what this board wants, it's for me to walk out of here and shut down the Milkroom Brewing Company. Mr. Mattson, you live there, right? Your family owned the place, we'll close it down. I have no problem doing that. If not, I'd like to deal with this Monday morning.
If I may.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would caution with the liquor license is that while the select board is the local licensing authority, that is technically issued by the state. And so if there's a violation with that, the state could potentially get involved at that point.
I'll call him right now on my way out,
ABCC.
let him know that I'm gonna do it. That's right, you know, I'll call both of my ABC reps on my way out, so they'll know before anybody else complains. I'll let them know ahead of time what's happening. You can deal with it on Monday, I've got a lot of stuff, that's where I'm at as the applicant, as the planning board member, as a member of a 5-generation family of this town. You tell me what you wanna do. 3 selectmen here can make a decision.
I mean, I
I think
think,
tonight was a waste of everybody's time personally,
I think,
and it was done by.
Really, you're gonna attack me.
okay,
There you both seen what happened right here. I'm not putting up with that anymore.
okay,
I'm
Both
letting
of
you
you.
know that.
both of you, please. Both of you.
I'm talking to the select board, I'm not talking to the individual. I'm not putting up with that in a public meeting. Are we clear?
I think the frustration is that there's been a lot of unspoken and spoken struggles to get things through. So this board has authority over the liquor license, as we've discussed. Beyond that, it's site plan approval stuff. The board has heard complaints, the board has discussed them, made wishes known that the site plan is adjusted to meet what is actually happening. And that's not something that this board has purview over. So,
If I may though, I would like to, whether or not we can enforce anything, I would like the select board, and if I need to make a motion to do so, that the proper departments, whoever it may be notified of this scenario, have them evaluate for compliance, and then they can make the decision whether or not to move forward with doing anything. Because as we discussed, there's nothing that this board has the authority to do to enforce site plan review.
Right.
Do I need to make a motion for that?
I would. I'll take that as your motion.
Then I would like to formally make a motion to make that.
there's a motion, is there a second?
Second the motion.
Questions, comments, conversation on the motion?
Just to be clear, you're directing the town administrator?
I'm making a motion to whomever,
Send a
If it's-
memo from the
a memo
select
from
board,
the select board to the appropriate department,
the
building
zoning enforcement
inspector.
officer.
whomever, to evaluate the situation, determine if there is compliance or if there's enforcement concerns, and act accordingly,
Based on the concerns
based
that
on
we've
the
received.
concerns that we've received.
So we have a motion and a second. Hearing clarification wise, you're good, Tamika?
Mhm.
Hearing none, roll call. I don't see Tom or Harry on, right?
No, they have, if not, they've not identified themselves, so.
Roll call, Harry, or Paul. On the motion.
On the motion, aye.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. So I think beyond that, I don't know what this board has the authority to do. We heard it. We've made the stance clear that there needs to be a lot of review of bylaws and policies, as well as our stance on hearing the concerns of individuals, residents.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we need to rule on?
Is there anything pertaining to
So,
the liquor license extension for any of the other days?
I mean, if this board is either amenable to extending either Friday night or Sunday, but I think Sunday was covered anyway by the hours.
Sunday till 6.
I don't know the times off the top of my head. Kevin?
Just on the times, yeah, through the chair, again, I know I'm redundant now, but the 12 to 12 was the original, 8 o'clock is Sunday, for this festival. And then our intent was never to serve till 1, we had gotten that approval to have that, I call it buffer, but it was 12 o'clock, so if amenable, 12, 12, and 8 PM. If the board would be willing to vote on that for this weekend, and then I'll spend every day next week talking with you about how to make it better moving forward, so we don't.
So I think what I was actually going to recommend, not recommend, but suggest if the board is considering it this way, is to do this for this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday and Sunday, 'cause Saturday is taken care of, the 12 to 12, because that's what was approved contingent on site plan approval previously. And so take the license piece and essentially treat it similar to what the Saturday was. But that was going to be what I was going to ask what the board's preference was, either to leave it as it is or consider granting the license extensions on Friday and Sunday based on the April 3rd meeting, the 12 to 12 consideration. Mr. Jarvie had asked for Sunday to go until 8 instead of 12. I was just saying 12 based on the communication that we had before. So I don't know how the board feels about that. Cause that's the other piece that this board could,
Extending the liquor license?
The hours. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I would like to have it on the record that approval of extending the liquor license hours is for that, to serve the alcohol. It does not extend to permission for music to extend past any hours or anything else associated with the event.
with the site plan approval process and review, that it's strictly our licensing authority as liquor license.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So is that a motion?
As a motion for a one-time approval of extension of hours for August 5th, 6th, and 7th.
I think the 6th is already covered.
4th, whichever.
Right, yeah,
Whichever.
Friday and Sunday.
This weekend.
Are you doing till 12 a.m. and 8 p.m. or are you doing 12 a.m. for both dates?
That's, I was looking at the previous where it was 12 to 12 for the entire week, and that's why I was based off that.
12 p.m. to 12 a.m.
But Mr. Jarvie had asked for was okay with Sunday ending at 8 p.m. So that's,
If he's amenable to that, then we can do Sunday, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay.
we have a motion. Tamika, you're good with that? And the clarification that it's liquor license explicit.
Not for
Explicit.
site plan activities.
And we're not condoning anything else outside of.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Additional questions, comments, concerns, conversation? I'll take a roll call. Paul?
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. So I think we've done what we can. Thank you, Paul and Jen, Austin and Tamika, for being here and providing all the time and effort the past 24 hours in the conversation, because it's a lot to digest, and I know, Paul, you and Jen have taken on a lot of the time to try to get caught up to speed. And thank you, Tim and Norm, Kevin and Seth, for being here also, because I think that it's a process, and we all are in this process, and across the board, there's a lot of things that we as a town need to work on. I'm sorry if it came across finger pointing directly at this was what was before us, but we, in our meetings, are coming across things in bylaws and policy and everything also that is lacking. So I'm sorry if it came across that way. Is there any other business? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ledger I.